Okay, good afternoon and welcome to our first Caregiver series, Staying Well Together. Today's session is on grief and loss during COVID-19. My name is Juliana Valencia and I'm a caregiver specialist with Fairfax Area Agency on Aging. And my coworker Lucy Garland is also with us today. Today's presentation is being recorded and our recording will be sent to all registrants by early next week. There will be a brief survey as you signed out, so please help us by giving us your feedback. A few housekeeping rules. All microphones are muted and cameras for participants are off as well. But if you have a question for our panelists at the end of their presentation, please feel free to type them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your panel. Now it is my pleasure to introduce today's speakers, Kristina Thomas and Lee Jenks. Kristina earned her Master's of Science in Child Development from Erickson Institute in Chicago in 2012. A year later, she earned her Master's of Social Work with an emphasis in medical social work from Loyola University in Chicago. In her 7 years working within the end-of-life care and bereavement world, she has found a way to utilize both degrees and work with people across the lifespan. She has a passion for addressing trauma at the time of death and helping those affected process their experience after the death of a loved one. Lee Jenks earned a Master's of Music Therapy and has over 17 years of experience as a board-certified music therapist. She received both her Bachelor's and Master's of Music Therapy from the Shenandoah University. After becoming board-certified, she started the music therapy program at Blue Ridge Hospice, where she currently works as a music therapist and clinical team leader. Her duties include direct patient service and case management, work in the bereavement department with co-facilitation of school groups, adult and child support groups, kids grief camp, public relations to expand services to the community, as well as staff support. Lee also works at Shenandoah University as adjunct music therapy faculty, has a certificate in the end-of-life care music therapy, and is a fellow of the Association for Music and Imagery, owning her own practice, Awaken Potential. Kristina and Lee are going to share their knowledge with us today. So thank you to both of you and welcome.
Thank you. Absolutely, thank you. So we're gonna open our time together this afternoon with a song, which is one of my favorite things to do. And this song is called Give Yourself to Love, and I love to use it to open groups and just bring strangers together. Kind friends all gathered round, there's nothing I would say. What brings us together here has blessed us all today. Love has made a circle that holds us all inside. Strangers are like family, and loneliness can't hide. So just give yourself to love. Love is what you're after. Open up your hearts to the tears and laughter, and give yourself to love. Give yourself to love. I've walked these mountains in the rain. I've learned to love the wind. And up before the sunrise to watch the day begin. I always knew I'd find you, but I never did know how. Like sunshine on a cloudy day, you stand before me now. So just give yourself to love. Love is what you're after. Open up your hearts to love is born in fire, planted like a seed. Love can't give you everything, but it gives you what you need. Love comes when you are ready. Love comes when you're afraid. It will be your greatest teacher, the best friend you have made. So just give yourself to love. Love is what you're after. Open up your hearts to tears and laughter, and give yourself to love. Give yourself to love. You just give yourself to love. Love is what you're after. Open up your hearts to tears and laughter, and give yourself to love. Give yourself to love. Give yourself to love.
Kristina, could you?
Sorry. Thank you so much, Lee. That was a beautiful song. All right. Let's share my screen. Hi. Hello, everyone. I'm Kristina, and I'm just going to go over a couple of things specifically about grief now in the time of COVID-19. So grief is the natural reaction that someone has after experiencing a loss. And I love that that is in all caps, because it's important to remember that natural part. Grief is not something that's wrong with us. It's not a problem. It's not, because it's nothing we can fix, right? If we could fix what we had lost, we could bring that back, and that's really hard to do. And oftentimes impossible, right? So instead of it being a problem, it's a natural reaction that we have after losing something that we love. And for now, there are many things that we may have lost. Support, just the ability to go out to the grocery store without high levels of anxiety. The ability to seek support, to have people come in. That can be really hard. And I think the first step to that is just acknowledging that it's hard, and being able to say what's hard, even if it sounds silly. I know for myself, especially recently, something I have genuinely missed is my barista that I talk to in the morning when I got coffee on my way to work pretty much every day. It's, one of those things that we always talked, and I miss that interaction. And that right now is not something I have. And it can be small like that, and it can be really big, right? It can be missing a funeral, or missing being able to say goodbye. But both of those losses are valid, even though they're not equal. So, and what that means is that we have permission to grieve now for all of those things. And we'll have permission to grieve again after we restart social interaction. We also have permission, and I think, I know I've heard a lot of people with goals that they have had during this time, like to bake bread and make all of these things. And I think it's really important, and My goal was to stay on top of the laundry. Has not happened. And it's okay just to get through, just to find a way to keep working every day if you're allowed to work, or teaching every day if you're teaching, or whatever it is that is happening right now. It's okay just to figure out how to get to tomorrow or how to get to the next hour. That's okay. And that means accepting support as it comes. It's going to look a little different now. It may be Zoom conversations like this. It may be people dropping off meals at your doorstep. But there are ways to do things. It'll just push us to be a little creative. But if someone offers, I would say accept. I was talking to Lee earlier this week, and one of the things that I noticed, especially I think in the second and third weeks of this virus, is that I was able to do my job a lot better if I was also taking in support that was being offered from our company. We have our music therapists that are playing songs for us every day, every morning and every afternoon that we can listen to, and reflections that are coming in for our chaplains. And that has been, once I started taking those in and taking time to take those in my day has been so much better. And so I'm really glad, first of all, that you are all here and participating in this Zoom webinar. And anything that comes your way, if you can, do it. If you don't have time for it, watch the recording later, right? That's also okay. I'm really big on permission, in case you didn't know. And I think, and also just to allow yourself to feel who and what you are. And on the bottom of this screen is a quote from Frozen 2. And it's called The Next Right Thing. Those of you with young kids might be very familiar with this song, but it is, "You are lost, all hope is gone, but you must go on and do the next right thing." And I think, I am starting to hear all sorts of stuff differently since this pandemic, and that is one of the quotes that has really been near and dear to me, and it's a good reminder. We just have to do the next thing. Now, talking about grief, it's a natural reaction, and there are many layers to grief. It can include anger and bargaining and all of those 5 stages. And there's a bonus stage I like to include called anxiety that sneaks up in there. And this slide really talks about how we want it to work. Line segment, a beginning and an end. But that's not how it works. Like, you might start off with anger and then resolve it, and then later on you'll come right back to anger or anxiety or acceptance or bargaining or all of those things. It goes on, and then as we see with this arrow, it doesn't end. That doesn't mean that it's gonna be this hard forever. It won't be. But we do get to be changed by what we have lost. The big things and the small things, and we will carry those things with us as people. So a lot of my clients hate this slide because it rings so true. It would be really nice if it had a beginning and an end, but this is a lot more of what it looks like. And I got this off of Instagram. I couldn't find the original author, but just so you know, it's not mine. So this is mine. And when we talk about grieving, when we talk about our processes, it's important, and when we talk about doing the next right thing or getting to the next day, this is an illustration I've created to show that it's okay to have a bad day. This person is, I lost my arrow. This person is all of us going on a hike. And then this person has made it 2 miles, and there is a rock, and they have tripped. And when you trip on a rock, you're hurt. You're probably, if you're on a trail, you're at that part of the trail for a little bit longer. But the thing that doesn't happen, especially if you've walked 2 miles, right? The thing that doesn't happen is you don't end up magically at the beginning of the trailhead again. the progress you made counts. Those 2 miles count. So you are allowed to get up and shower every day because that's what all the people say helps, and get ready for work, and then have a day where you don't, where you stay in pajamas, maybe business top on top, pajamas on the bottom, or whatever works, right? Or you stay in bed on Saturday because you can, right? And actually that's okay anyway. I wouldn't even call it a bad day, but we are allowed to have non-productive bad days. Or days where we just didn't do what we thought we were going to or what we had wanted to do. But that doesn't erase this 2 miles. This 2 miles counts. Progress made is progress made. And I'm just about done. This next slide is it just has some helpful articles and websites and one of my favorite grief Instagram pages, and a note on our services. We also have videos that we do. You might notice that trail. I've done a video for that on our Facebook page at Blue Ridge Hospice at facebook.com. And for now, I will stop and hand it over to Lee, who can help us figure out what to do with all of that.
Yeah, so our whole thought process was to not only give you some education, but to also provide you tools for your coping toolbox. So I'm going to share my screen. All right, so what you can do, there's a lot of things we can't do right now, but there are things that you can do. Let's see. Okay, so let me move this out of the way. Okay, so what you can do, and things that I have found that work may not work for you, but we're just giving you tools. So one thing that I have found is just creating a daily schedule that has small and large goals in it. So for example, large goals for me were cleaning, washing my windows, cleaning my car in and out. Small goals for me have been do 1 load of laundry today, Friday, cook dinner Friday. So you're able to check off the small things, you feel accomplished. And then when you're able to check off those large things, that makes you feel even better. Try to keep consistency. So try to maintain some sort of schedule. So, during the week, especially, I find it helpful. Okay, I get up at 7:30, I have my coffee, I do my check-in at work. Have a schedule, something that you can follow. And even as it shows there, printing something off. That's what I had to do for my kids to give them sort of some consistency and schedule and routine. And then just remember, when I learned this, I felt like my time at home changed. That the small things are now the big things. So that could be a flower on a tree. It could be a tiny daffodil coming out in the midst of a field. Those are small things, but right now they're so big and we have to take them in. So you can't control any of those things. Outside circumstances, things places we can and can't go, things being closed. There's all those things we can't control right now. But what you can control are the things that we take for granted and don't think about often. But you can control what you eat and when you eat. Okay, so it's a choice to constantly eat ice cream and things that you don't normally eat because they're available to you. You have control over those things. You have control over your sleep. So again, having some sort of pattern. Okay, I'm going to try to be in bed by 10. I'm going to try to be up by 8. Giving yourself perimeters. And you can also control your exercise. So, maybe you used to be a runner and you just don't feel like you can run. Well, at least move your body. Go out and be in nature. Go out and not have to worry about being in close confines like a store. So those are things you can control. So how can you help yourself? So again, just tips that I have found to be helpful and I've shared with our staff at hospice. Just immersing yourself in nature and what is around you, the beauty, the small things. I've even found, sounds so funny, but sometimes when it becomes overwhelming to me, I go outside, I take my shoes off, and I just stand in the grass. It doesn't have to be long, but you're just connecting to the earth and what is around you. And it helps to provide some grounding and reminders that, okay, I'm doing this, I'm getting through. Just feeling the sunshine. Today there isn't much sunshine where I am, but feeling the sunshine. Listening to music. So that's a big part of who I am as a music therapist. So ways that you can use music. You can use it for relaxation, just to kind of almost help take you to a different place. So even if it's just 5 minutes, if it's 3 minutes, using music to just take you to a different place, whether that's, you know, putting on a song from your younger years and going back to that prom or that event that you attended. Also letting it take you on a journey. So sometimes just putting on a piece of music and letting your mind be blank. Just let the music take you wherever it needs to go. We can also use music to help match our feelings, but on the flip side of that, to help move us, okay? So if I wake up one morning and, hey, I feel pretty good, like I've got this COVID thing, I might put on my happy song, whatever that is. But on days where I'm just like, it's like drudgery, I get up and I can do this and everything's bothering me, I can find a piece of music that kind of matches where I am, but then use another piece of music to move you. So matching and moving. Also just reading a book, exercise, and I think we forget that breathing is so important. Again, we take that for granted, but it is a tool that we have with us at any moment of any time of any day. Oops, so let me go back. So I stopped sharing my screen for a minute, but I wanted to leave just a brief way of how you can connect with your breathing in any moment at any given time. So I invite you all to just allow your eyes to close, and no one can see you, so that's fantastic. So you don't have to feel awkward. Just get as comfortable as you can in the chair that you're sitting in your bed, wherever you are. And just allow the sounds in the room just to become part of the background. And just start to focus on your breath. It's the one thing that you will always have that's a constant in your life. So I invite you to take one hand and place it on your chest, and the other hand place on your belly. And as you bring greater awareness to your breath, just merely notice which hand is rising. The goal is to have the hand on your belly rise because that represents slow and steady breathing. Feel free to keep your hands in place until you feel like you're breathing from your belly and not in your chest. And now give yourself permission to take these next few minutes just for you, letting go of thoughts, feelings, the day's events, responsibilities. For the next few minutes, this is all about you. And now I want you to think about the numbers 1 through 10. 10 is as far as I want you to go. I want each of you on your next inhale to say the number 1 to yourself. And then when you exhale, say the number 2 to yourself. Continue in this pattern until you reach 10, and then start again. That's it. Nice and easy. Use the pattern of your breath to help you let go and just focus on your breath and the continuous pattern from 1 to 10. And if you get stuck or forget what number you are on, start again at the number 1 with your inhale. That's it. Yeah. And when you feel ready, when you finish that last pattern, just opening your eyes and coming fully back, feeling that deep connection that you made, and using one of the most valuable tools that you have in your toolbox. So I'm going to share my screen again now that I backed out. And we want to open up, let's see. We want to open up to any questions that you might have. We have plenty of time, so please feel free to ask all the questions that you have. And I think Juliana is going to help us out with that.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was very relaxing. So we do have a few questions. And so, you know, many of us right now are experiencing kind of a collective loss of normalcy.
Mhm.
For example, some of us or most of us are experiencing the loss of our freedom to move about, our sense of safety, our ability to celebrate birthdays, college admissions, our social connections, our rituals, like attending mass, weddings, having funerals, and of course, financial security. So many of us do not really realize how deeply these losses are affecting us, and we may experience fear about the future. Could any of you talk about anticipatory grief and how it affects our current emotional state, and how do we recognize it?
Yeah, I think anticipatory grief is a really good word for what's happening now. That you know, it's all valid as grief, but we are in the throes of a crisis. We're not past the crisis yet, and that leads for times of anticipatory grief. And as many caregivers know and are probably very familiar with, it is important to do what you can, and adapt in the ways that you can. I know that you may have already found a way to bring some of those things into your house for your loved ones that cannot leave the home. And now we are those loved ones that cannot leave the home. And so it makes, so in those times, there's, it's okay for it to not be okay, for it to not be ideal. But there are ways to create ritual in your home. Like, I know that there are I know that our chaplains would lead a memorial service from Zoom, for example. And I've heard, like today, I dressed up in a presentation dress and my Blue Ridge Hospice sweater, because that's what I would do if I was doing a presentation in real life. And things like that can help us get us in the right place for those things. But it is okay to feel like something's wrong or to be fearful, because something's wrong, and there are things to be nervous about, right? And like Lee said, there are only a certain amount of things that we can control that can help us, but to know also that is one of the things that helps me in this, who is pretty anxiety prone, is to know that me staying home, as hard as it is, helps protect my coworkers that need to keep seeing our patients. And that helps me give me some, like, okay, like it doesn't feel like we're doing anything in our homes, but we're doing something really important. And to give purpose to why give some meaning to the loss is really important. I'm jumping all the way to the other spectrum, but we talk about anticipatory grief, which is where we're at. But even in that, we can start to find some meaning. And we talk, Kessler is going to come out with a new book that's all about meaning making. And those moments that we have, and the thing that we might have now that we wouldn't have had otherwise, like I got extra time with my husband and my cat. You may have extra time with your loved one without other stressors or social engagements that you thought you were going to have. Those things can help, but it's okay if it doesn't too. So that's what I got.
Thank you. Talking about that, I know that sometimes we kind of have to, when we are going through grief, we kind of want to know, how long is this going to take? Am I moving or not?
Right.
So somebody asked, how long should someone live in anticipatory grief?
Oh, as long as it's happening. Anticipatory grief doesn't end until, if we're talking about death, until the person dies. And then it gets to be grief, right? And not to say that anticipatory grief is not grief, it is. It's just grief before someone dies. So we are all living in anticipatory grief until this crisis is over. And that doesn't mean every day has to be horrible. Some people do this stage well, feel this grief well. Others not as well. And sometimes we may be both of those people, right? And so anticipatory grief lasts as long as the before is, or as for some people, it starts when they know that they're going to die. For us, it very well could have started. I don't think it started for me until like maybe 2 weeks ago, when I was like, oh, like this is going to last longer. Like I won't see my coworkers for a while now in person. And so that's when it starts, when it starts to sink in, but it won't end until we're on the other side. But there's still hope in that.
Yeah. It's true. It takes a little while to sink in and to realize, okay, this is what I'm going through. Yeah. That's absolutely true. So could you talk a little bit about the stages of grief and how it relates to our current situation? I know you mentioned a little bit about it, but could you also talk a little bit more?
Yep. So the stages of grief, I'm a big fan of. I feel like they help us know what to process. But there are many layers, and remember that around an arrow dot. And they were originally created by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross to help medical students know what someone who was dying was experiencing. And when she was dying herself, she felt like some of them really held true and some of them didn't. So I think that that's helpful when we come across that. But I know we talk about anger being a stage of grief. Bargaining, I don't think of them as linear, so I don't have them all in order in my head. Anger, bargaining, denial, acceptance. Lee, can you think of the fifth that I'm missing?
Denial, bargaining, acceptance, anger. You said that?
I said anger. And I throw in anxiety in there because anxiety is a big one. They can all coincide at the same time. And I think that, and we may be feeling all of that all at once. We may be feeling one thing at a time. And I think, and the other thing I want to note is not all grief is sad or angry or hard. It can be hard. It can be, right? We often think of tears when we think of grief. But remember, grief is just the reaction to having lost someone we love. One of the reactions I'm hearing lately is relief, that there's relief that my person is no longer sick, that I know where they are, that I don't have to be the one in charge of making these choices anymore. And sometimes faith can help with that. I know where they are or whatever it is, but sometimes we can just to say that if you're not super sad or you're not super angry or those things, that's okay too. And it's okay to feel relief or to feel gratefulness in this moment, alongside all of those other things that are happening. That can be part of the process.
Thank you. You know, someone just sent a question. They say, this person says, I feel guilty about wanting my elderly, failing dear mom to pass away before she might suffer even more by possibly getting the coronavirus in her nursing home. How can I deal with that?
That's a good question. I think that the first thing is to say, okay, like this situation is really hard and it's unfair and I shouldn't have to be in it. And all of that is true. You shouldn't have to be in this position. But your question, it sounds like a very loving statement to me, that you would like your mother to not suffer anymore, and you definitely don't want her to suffer with coronavirus, which involves, that we know, attacks the lungs. That sounds like a really compassionate statement to me. The thing that I would ask anyone who's having guilt feelings like that to do is to think of what they would tell their best friend if their best friend was in the same situation. If your best friend told you that she was feeling guilty about that, would you shame her? Would you say, that's horrible? Chances are probably not, right? We would say something encouraging and say, these are unreal times and you are faced with a pretty, like this huge problem that's going on. And none of that is fair and it's okay. And so sometimes we have to be our own friends, and our own champions. And so I would encourage you to try that, but to know that it's okay to feel the guilt, but that also sounds like a really compassionate statement.
Do you have any words or suggestions for people who may not have been able to have a funeral and may be privately grieving the death of a loved one due to the coronavirus?
Yeah, so there's going to be a Facebook post today at Blue Ridge Hospice about this very thing from our grief counselor, Courtney, and it goes through a list of things. But I think, you know, if you've got a candle and maybe a CD player, you can have a memorial service at home. It is not the same, right? And it's okay to acknowledge that. If there's something like this, like Zoom, where you can invite people in for that, again, I would recommend wearing what you would wear. Maybe it's, you know, a loved one's favorite color, or a black dress, or whatever you would wear for that, and have that moments to be sad, and maybe moments that, you know, a Zoom chat where you can share memories, that there are ways to honor our loved ones while we wait to be able to lay them to rest, and while we wait to gather together. There are ways to create that ritual so that we're not in this perpetual holding pattern.
Yeah, that's a wonderful way to create rituals, at least the ones that we can right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we have a question from the audience. It says, I have a husband with Parkinson's late stages and has had 4 strokes. He has always been at home and I have had help. He's okay at the time. He's under hospice care at the moment. Sometimes I feel angry about dealing with everything. Is that okay? Is that part of grief?
Do you see these heads a nodding? Yeah. Yeah, it is part of the grief, and it's okay to be angry.
Just to validate, we are not in that current situation.
Right.
But I can say for myself, I've had days where I'm just angry at the whole situation, everything.
Yeah.
So it's not just you feeling that alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we were talking before about how we are grieving the loss of many things that we were able to do before. And I think this is kind of related to the next question. It says, what's the best way to plan your day when you are now leaving many of your hours with a person who has moderate to severe dementia? And that's very tough, for at least for family caregivers right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a new norm. So your schedule that you're going to make now is not one that you've had before, but maybe one that seems to revolve around their particular patterns. So say they're early risers, so getting them up at that time, giving them breakfast, maybe it's going out for a walk, try to develop a new schedule without having any history in mind. But maybe they do take a nap in the afternoon, so scheduling that in. But also knowing that, especially in the line of work that we're in, we understand that every day is different. Sometimes every hour is different.
Mm-hmm.
So just acknowledging that, I think, is also really important, and just kind of being in the moment and going with the flow. That's okay too. So don't feel bad if you can't keep a strict schedule.
Mm-hmm. And I would say, if it's possible, if this person that has dementia, if they're content watching TV for a while, to take some time for yourself, or whatever it is, if there's a time where you can take some time for yourself, breathe, like Lee taught us, or to shower, or whatever it is you need to do, it's okay. I had heard something this is about kids, but I had heard something on a YouTube video that was like, screen time is for well times, not for pandemic. Like, give your kid all the screen time they need, right? So you can work, or whatever it is. And so it's okay. Like, you have permission to keep them safe and occupied if you need some time for yourself as well, if that's possible.
So our next question comes from the audience as well, and it says, I am experiencing a lot of stress and body pain, especially back pain. What can I do to minimize this anxiety?
There is this book, it's very academic, but it's called The Body Keeps the Score. And sometimes I think the title is good enough, that our bodies internalize this stress and this anxiety. I think the breathing exercise that Lee taught us is a really good thing. Also, if you don't have time, although that doesn't take too long, but just making your exhale a little bit longer than your inhale. Listening, like I'm just talking for Lee now, listening to the songs.
We work in conjunction. Okay.
And I think that you caregivers have probably heard this a lot, but it is hard to take care of others if you're not taking care of yourself. So it's not a selfish moment if you listen to your favorite song, or if you take time to breathe, or whatever it is. That's not selfish. That's what you need to do in these exceptional times to be able to keep doing what you've been asked to do. So feeling that back pain and that stress. The other thing I can think of is, I know that there are a lot of I know there's some yoga and some apps that have made themselves free that do breathing exercises and things, or yoga for free. That may not be up your alley, but there are a lot of things that are being given to us, or people that are doing them on YouTube that we can watch that may help. But I think give yourself permission and let it be stressful, and then find ways that works best for your body.
And also, I think just designating time for yourself. When my kids were young and it was stressful and I'm working full time, the shower was my place. So I knew that was going to be 10 or 15 minutes where I made sure my kids were safe. And if they cried, it was okay, because this was just my time. They were safe. I could tend to them after I finished. And I actually looked at the drain in the shower. And sometimes it's really good to have a visual of saying, okay, I'm worrying, my biggest fear and worry right now is contracting this virus. Okay, so saying that out loud and actually watching that water go down the drain and allowing yourself just to have that release and that visual to go with that. It's been helpful.
Yeah, I like that.
Lee, how can we use music to ease our anxiety and help with our current feelings due to this pandemic? I've heard before that music, there's a relationship between, I guess, the vibrations of each song and our brain. I don't know, maybe you can go more into that.
Well, like I talked a little bit about, it's not so much the technicalities of the music, because, you know, as a music therapist, we're trained in all of that, and the ordinary public is not. So I wouldn't focus so much on that, but what feels good to you. So whether that's a certain vibrational, it doesn't even matter. So if there's a song that makes you feel good and you feel like you need to hear it, hear it. If you need a song that actually matches where you are, then listen to it. But also just being able to put on a piece of music, maybe one that doesn't have words, where you can focus on your breath that I just taught you, which will allow your mind just to be at ease and kind of take you on a journey. And that can be enough to let go of that anxiety, at least redirect your mind and body at that time.
Okay. So we have another question from the audience. It says, what suggestions do you have to encourage someone who is depressed, has basically given up on life, needs to be told because doesn't want to get out of bed, brush your teeth, eat, get dressed?
I think this is hard, but encouragement may not work at first. I think the first step is to say, I'm sorry you're feeling this way. It must be so hard to not have energy to get out of bed. I can't imagine what that's like. You know, and say things that are true, and then ask, is there anything I can do? And maybe that thing is, you know, just being on the other end of the phone. Or if you're with them in person, just sitting there and letting them know that they're not alone. That their depression is probably telling them that they are and that they're not worthy. And so your job can be say, I believe you are worthy of your brush being brushed, your teeth being brushed, or your hair being brushed. But those tasks can be really hard for someone with depression. I don't know if there's an opportunity to talk to a doctor, but if there is, that might be an option. But I think the first thing, in terms of encouragement, the first thing to do is to just say, just that validation piece, I'm so sorry that this depression is so bad. And to remind them that they are important.
Do you have any recommendations of, somebody's asking this, do you have any recommendations on how to communicate to older parents who are still going out at this moment and they're not really following any of the guidelines that have been recommended?
Mm.
How to approach that subject?
I mean, I don't think we can make up the stats. So, you know, showing them. And I think the scary part of this disease is that we can be carriers up to 2 weeks and not even know it. And that's different than the flu or the common cold or the stomach bug. And so I think just throwing it out there that this is the reality of it. And that can be part of the denial process. We're like, oh, no, or like, I'm not going to get, like, I'm invisible, you know? So, I mean, you can't ignore the facts and what's going on. So perhaps just sharing that. Kristina, do you have any other thoughts on that, or?
That is tough. I have come across this, and in a very loving way, I have said, I need, especially if I'm the decision maker, I need to know what your decisions are if you can't speak for yourself, because you're putting yourself at extra risk. And that may sound a little harsh, but that may be something that gets through. I think that there are, you are not alone in experiencing that, but just to say, like, I believe I don't want you to get sick. I want you here. Here are the things I want you here for. If you go out and don't get sick, that's great. But there's a risk. You know, we just can't, just like in all of these things, you can't control what your parents are going to do. But they can't control what everyone else is doing. They can't make everyone else wear masks or only touch the things they're buying at the grocery store or things like that. Like, so to know that other people may not be safe. And like Lee said, we could be passing it around and not knowing it. So just reassurance, and then also knowing that you won't be able to control what they do. You can control their interactions with you if they're not being safe. But you can't control the actions that they do.
Thank you. Lucy, do you have any other questions? I think we had a registrant who sent a question via email.
Yes, and this question more deals with, you've talked a lot about how to help yourself, but this person is asking, how do I help other people who have been unable? Let me try and find it again. I had it and then I lost it. When people are not able to have their funerals and their celebrations and things, and people are, this person would like to know, how can I help somebody in that situation when they express their sadness to me?
I would just validate it. That is really sad. This is really hard. And it's one of those things, and the reason I keep going back to it is it's one of those things that can help make something better when it can't be made right. That's a Megan Devine quote. But that sitting with someone in what is going on, there may be things like sending them some groceries, or may be some practical things, or a song, or just sitting with them. And I wish that we can't really make it better, right? We can't make people feel better. We would like to, but if there is something that does that, it's validating and letting them know that you're there, and to encourage them to accept the help, whatever it is. So if it's a card that you're sending, or groceries, or something or a Zoom conference, really encourage them. But grief is really unique, and it belongs to each person. So they're going to experience what they're experiencing, and the most important thing is to not tell them that they're not experiencing it.
I almost think just saying, going off of providing that validation first.
Mm-hmm.
But then saying, okay, so the reality is we can't have your wedding right now. It has to be rescheduled. But maybe can we put together a slideshow of pictures of when you all first met, and pair that with music, and let's just celebrate what got you to this point. And yes, it's on hold, but what can we do to kind of celebrate and memorialize that moment? I've been seeing a lot of like kids' birthdays, and people have been doing drive-bys and posters. And so what can we do? So not being stuck in we can't, but what is some way that we can still celebrate in some way?
Yes. Yeah, I think one of the things that makes this moment unique is that it's really pushing us to be creative and to rethink things like birthdays and weddings and funerals, and how we can make them meaningful in a different way than what we are used to. So thank you for that.
We have to be very creative now, right?
Right,
Yeah.
and one of our participants noted that too, and they said, my Bible study leader passed 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Her pastor held a celebration of life via Zoom, which
Love it.
allowed many people from different states to participate.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that is the one thing that Zoom gives us, is the ability to connect through state lines. I know I've been able to attend a couple of my church services in Chicago, which is not something I would have been able to do had it not been on Zoom. And I think that things like, there are opportunities that allow more people to be present, even if it's on a different space, a digital space. than would have been before. That's a beautiful example.
And some of those things may stay with us, and that would be a great thing.
Yeah.
Now that we've learned we can do those.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we have one more question from the audience. It says, my grandparents want to stay with me and they would rather spend time with and be in danger to die than die alone. Is that okay? Is it okay for?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, sure. It says, my grandparents want to stay with me and they would rather spend time with and be in danger to die than die alone. Is this okay?
I think that they want to stay with you.
Yes, I think the question is whether it is okay, the attitude and the behavior that the grandparents are having, that they would rather stay with the person and put themselves in danger than to die alone.
I think whatever works for your family too is also important during this time. And I can totally see that. And that's okay. I mean, whatever works for your family. I don't think there's a right or wrong. We've never had this experience before. We don't really have anything to go on.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I agree.
It's kind of hard, right? Because at least with having older parents, I know sometimes as a child, kind of the roles sometimes tend to reverse a little, and you want to protect them and tell them what's best for them and what not to do. But like you said, at the end of the day, we have to assess what's best for our family and what really works for our family.
Yeah. And I think and what was true for our parents back then is now true for us too. I think one of the beautiful things caregiving gives us is the opportunity to care for those that have cared for us. But that also means those teenage years, right? Where we didn't listen to our parents and we slammed our doors and walked out of the house and snuck out. Maybe once or twice, and now we're being the parent to that teenager now too, and I would also say what works for you and your family. If it's a decision that is okay for you, and it's okay and it's what they want, then I would say do it. But it also makes sure that it's a decision that's okay for you.
So we're getting ready to wrap up. And as I mentioned before, there will be a brief survey as you sign out. So please take a moment to answer those questions and help us provide topics that you are interested in. Also, I wanted to invite you to our next Staying Well Together session, which will be on laughter yoga, and it will be on Friday, May 8th from 2 to 3 p.m. I want to thank you, Kristina and Lee, for giving us your time and for sharing your expertise today. This has been a really wonderful presentation and also very insightful. I have a last minute question, and I also think Lee wanted to close the webinar with a song. So one of the questions is whether somebody asked if they can share your slides with the community at large, and also your contact information in case somebody in the future wants to reach out.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Perfect. So I will, with that, I'll let you, Lee, close the webinar.
And we're going to end on an uplifting note. Literally. Here comes the sun. Do-do-do-do. Here comes the sun. I said, it's all right. Little darling, it's been a long, cold, lonely winter. Little darling, it feels like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun, do-do-do-do. Here comes the sun, I said, it's all right. Little darling, the smiles returning to their faces. Little said it's alright. Little darling, I feel the ice is slowly melting. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, and I said, it's alright. Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, and I said, it's alright. It's alright.
That was beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Mhm.